This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Daily Leader. Super glad y'all are back. Of course, smash, I feel so cheesy when I say that, smash that like or subscribe button. Yeah, do that. Or do one better, go get the Daily Leader tattoo. Get it imprinted into your haircut if you would like. Go tell your mother, your father, your sister, your brother. But honestly, if you enjoy the Daily Leader, we do ask that you like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. That would be fantastic. All right, that's enough of that. Today we have an incredible guest who is like a small world connection in terms of, I can't believe that he and I had so many shared experiences, and we got to have a phone call. And then I found out that Brad knows Travis, who he's about to introduce in just a minute, and like from a long time ago, right? And so this is just one of those really cool moments for me when I'm like, man, interesting for me, the way the Lord works, interesting the way timing works, all those kind of things. So I'm excited for this conversation. I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of it. So with no further ado, Bradley, would you introduce our guest today?
I can. Welcome to the Daily Leader, Travis. We are so grateful that you're here with us today. And I think our listeners are in for a huge treat because of some of the things that you've been thinking through, some of the things that you've been developing and building, and how meaningful and important they are for each of our listeners as they grow and mature their understanding of leadership. So you're a husband, you're a father, you are a musician, which is how I originally met you when you were playing guitar.
Back in Georgia, man.
Back in Georgia, 2014. That was 10 years ago now.
Look at that. Dear Lord. You feel old?
I do.
Yeah.
And I look old. And so there's that too.
You're looking older than I remember that for sure.
Yeah, I'll take it. Okay, next though, your audio, video, lighting, sales leader, and you've been doing that for a while now, leveraging some of your background in music and production, which is awesome. But more recently, you're the co-founder of I Must Stand and the creator and a facilitator for the Wake Weekend, which you just wrapped one up. And so we're looking forward to kind of getting the rundown on both what I Must Stand is, the Wake Weekend, and why that's such a powerful experience for leaders. And one thing I want to slip in is that you may or may not be privy to information related to a forest fire. So there's that. That's not getting edited out. We're just going to throw that on the internet and see where that
It was a long time ago, okay?
You may or may not know something about a forest fire. So there's
I don't know anything about how it was formed, allegedly. I do know it was in the middle of a drought. And I also know that we tried to put it out, and the people in the neighborhood thought we were heroes. So.
Wow.
I love that.
You are a hero. You're a hero to me.
In my own story, I'm also my hero. So yeah, 7th grade was a long time ago.
Yeah, man. And yet it was just yesterday.
It's just yesterday. Again, y'all feel old yet?
Listen, speaking of fires, we are about to burn you, Travis.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, we are. Here it comes. Travis, this is our game. So before we get into knowing you, unpacking your story, we're going to put you through our ringer. The game, as we described, is called Slow Burn. It was supposed to be fast, rapid-fire questions. Turns out it's not that way. What we're going to do, we're going to give you two paradoxes, two things that leaders have to wrestle with. You run your own business, you startup guy. So, all right, we're going to give you two. Rock and a hard place, you got to choose one and tell us why, man. Go with your gut. There's a point system. If you can figure out how the point system works, you will be the first. I assess points as we go.
As you see fit.
Yeah, there are winners and losers, and it's mostly just how I decide the game is going to be.
Fair enough.
So with all of that, Brad, I leave any of the rules out? I don't think I did. Yeah, we may or may not kick you off as a result of how this goes.
All right.
So just
let's go. I stand by what I say. Right. Let's do it.
So, and this make it progressively harder. I'm just throwing that out there too. So
fair enough.
Here we go. For our listeners that are out there, we got a couple new ones that are coming in here too. So, all right. So we're going to give you the first two. All right. So if you had to choose between these two, which one is more important and why? Being or doing?
Being, because it leads to doing.
Okay. Explain. Go on. What do you mean?
This is largely what we do with the Wake Weekend. So thank you for such a great setup on the first question. So your beliefs are guiding your action, right? So right thinking presupposes right living. And if I want to change the result or if I want to change the outcome, typically that means that I need to change some sort of behavior or not behavior, some sort of belief, behavior modification in whatever application, whether that's in your relationships, your businesses, your personal goals. Typically, they are not effective. Discipline can only get you so far when you're going against an internal force. So we help guys get aware of what's going on for them internally and help reshape or remean certain beliefs that they've had in their lives that are yielding the results that they get. So being overdoing all day, every day.
Love it, man. Good answer. 342 points. That was well done. All right. Question number two. Questions or answers as a leader? What's more important, questions or answers?
My go-to is answers, but I've learned that questions matter a whole lot more. I'm guilty of making all sorts of assumptions and trying to be right and wanting to be right. And so if I can allow myself to ask more questions and get more curious, especially again, in whatever context, relationally, from a business standpoint, I need to understand what's first happening for the person I'm trying to connect with. And if I can connect, if I can understand what they're doing, connect with that, it can often yield the result that I want to yield, and I can get to where I want to get to. So questions for sure. And I will say, like, I love being right. I love being right. I try to be right a lot, and it does not serve me very well. So
Yeah.
I it, even saying this, like, I need to ask more questions. It's a personal challenge for me to be
Mhm.
more curious about whatever I'm into or whatever I'm personally up to.
That's a great answer. My wife loves to be right. She really does. She will never listen to this podcast, so she'll never know that I said that. We're actually both firstborn, so I relate. We were like both always competing for who's right, man. But I love the answer. It's a great answer. I love questions. And yeah, that's 273. We're moving on. Next question. All right, relationships or results?
I'm gonna say relationships, not because it's just like the leadership thing to say. Mostly, I'm one thing I've learned a lot recently is how much further I go when I'm with other people. Like seeing people around me as resources. Um, I have historically yeah, I've prided myself on doing things by myself, and it's kind of been like a hero slash victim story that a racket that I've ran in my mind of like I've got to do this by myself. I carry the weight of the world on my shoulders, and it's bled over into my marriage. It's bled over into how effective I can be inside of work, whether it's inside of the business that I own or in my full time job. So being intentional with looking at all the resource around me, realizing that there are so many people out there that there are partners worth working with. There are people that want to that are like-minded that have the same desires as you, and you can go further when you're working with people. So relationships matter a lot more, not just because it's the nice leadership thing to say, but because it's truly effective.
Yeah, totally. No, that's great, man. That's great. I run and have run similar rackets and relate to that a lot, like a lot, man. So I love that. It's a powerful answer. All right, vision or values?
Vision all day long. Um, Man, I feel like even with I Must Stand as of recent, the conviction in which, like the strength in which I can stand against opposition comes when the vision is clear. Like when I am so clear on what I'm doing and where I'm going and what I'm up against, it just everything else falls into alignment. And I get the clearer the picture becomes, the more fired up I get. And it's on. This is a paradox. Like I feel like I had to walk without vision to get the vision to become clearer. Like there had to be movement in the process. It was like go and learn, open up myself to feedback in the process, and then we're molding this vision that is shaping, and it gets more exciting, and I run toward it with more velocity. So vision. And also I'm an ex, full-time ministry guy. I've spent a lot of time in churches, and so values, I've seen a lot of people put values on walls and they mean absolutely nothing. So I'm I'm beyond the values that we just throw up on walls and largely ignore. So
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. I hope our listeners, hope you all heard that even in your vision, I thought that was super insightful. It has become clearer, it sounds like, and correct me if I didn't hear this correctly, it has become clearer along the journey. And that clarity gets you fired up, right? But if you're like, man, my vision isn't perfectly clear, it's like start with whatever vision you have now. And it will become clear as you march forward with.
if you're open to feedback, that's a big part of it. Like I thought I had what it looked like multiple times, and then talking about people being resources and relationships mattering. I've had people along the process love me enough to be honest with me, and it's gotten to a point where it's like, wow, this thing can be a lot bigger than what it truly is. And the bigger the vision gets, the clearer it has become. Again, the more passion is there, but it has been in tandem, walking towards something, listening to feedback in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. So not just banging your head against the wall, but inviting those people and the relationships in as resources, like you were talking about, will help give you clarity
Yeah.
on that. That's love
And
that.
another
Love that.
point of clarity first on the values thing. Churches are not the only people that throw values on the wall that they have no
Yeah.
intention of following. It's just the
I think that's,
application that I've largely been in. So
yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that's pretty universal. Values look great up on a wall, but they don't always translate into how we are living our day to day. They can, and I wish that they did more, right? But I think to me, I tend to think, hey, if the vision is in line, then there's a good chance we'll be living out the values that align with that vision, rather than the other way, create those values and then hope a vision comes of that. That's just my personal take. But I agree. There's a lot of places values are on walls and not necessarily how we live our day to day. So
Travis, so insightful, man. Let's keep it going. We've got culture or productivity here. Culture or productivity.
this one's going to get me in trouble because I know the culture eats strategy for breakfast, all that stuff. This probably falls in line with the same line of thinking with values for me. I've seen people preach and defend culture that is, what's the best way to say it? They defend it, it's almost like a defense to say, I'm not open to feedback because this is our culture. And so I've got a little bit of internal stuff with that where I'm just like, I've seen people weaponize culture versus use it for productivity, which is the whole point, right? Like culture is supposed to propel you towards something. It's supposed to be an advocate for you, not the inverse. Uh, Unfortunately, I don't know why it is. I feel like the people who I'm speaking pretty general here, so I know that it's not the case all the time. I've just experienced plenty of places where culture is of high value. They talk about it all the time, but it's largely used as an excuse to not open yourself up to feedback or to not look at ways of improvement. So I know that when culture is right, it will propel you forward, but um, I'm gonna say productivity just to be that guy on this one.
I love it. Performance or recovery. Performance or recovery.
Oh man, I'm gonna say recovery. Um, I mean, uh, because I feel like what ramps up, I'm just thinking in my mind, like equating this to the fact that we just had an event, right? So we just performed this really big event. It's one of a big revenue generating thing for us, a huge transformational piece in the lives of a lot of men, very powerful and impactful thing, and we have to perform that at a high level. That's the second one that we've done, and it looked the way it did, and we handled the amount of people that we did because of the conversations we had after the first one. And if we're unwilling to look at feedback, listen to feedback, and figure out what it means and how it can propel us forward, like again, even I look at that, it's what largely shaped some of our vision. Like feedback that we got from our first event made the vision for I Must Stand as a whole, which the event is a part of, not the entirety of the vision. It made the vision as a whole clearer. That all came from the postmortem. So the recovery, if in this application, at least the way I'm processing it, the semantics of the word, I think that is vital.
Tradition or innovation?
Innovation. Not saying that the ways that people have done things before are wrong or that you can't learn from them. Um, I align with innovation because this is I'm learning a lot, like doing what I'm doing right now. I'm by no means a trailblazer in this work, but it's new to me. So I'm innovating myself in this, and the process is innovating me. And so when I think of tradition versus innovation, I think of what has been comfortable for me versus what is calling something out of me that I've not been capable of or have thought capable of before. What requires courage of me to move forward, and if it's calling courage out of me, more than likely that's the road I need to be taking. So
I love it. Dude, Travis was confident, man. I mean, you didn't stutter there. Some people they really have to think.
y'all were really nice to me. You gave me notes beforehand, and so I did read them, but at the same time I'm like, I'm not going to come on here and just be a freaking waffle. Well, like one way I could think about it, it's like people want strong opinions. I'm going to give a freaking strong opinion.
I love it. I love
I
it.
love that, man.
That's
I
how
know,
we
like,
feel
okay.
about Costco and Apple products. You know what I mean?
Oh man, yeah, we have a debate. We've got a buddy that hosts a show with us named Shane Kuiper, and he comes on all the time. He's a big Android guy, but then he also shops at Sam's Club. So we judge him that those two go together, and then Apple and Costco go together.
He's
We have very
okay
opinions
to
on it.
ruin everyone's group chat and eat subpar pizza.
Gosh,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you.
That's
That's what
Not
we've been
okay.
saying.
it's fine.
Also, Brad,
Do
I just want
better.
you to know you are screwed now at Costco. They're scanning cards. So I know sometimes you order online, but if you borrow your mother-in-law's card and you
No,
go,
dude,
they're gonna see.
not mine. Come to North Carolina. Well, actually, don't come to North Carolina right now.
I'm telling
Costco's a crapshoot right now.
you. Yeah,
But
that's probably true.
outside of
I shouldn't be laughing.
freaking just my hometown destroyed at the moment. Thanks
Oh man.
for laughing.
Yeah, I know. I didn't mean to laugh at that. I apologize. I take that back. I just the picture. Not. Anyways,
Taylor,
we're
you're
moving.
going to hell when you die, and it's just going to
Good
be a
Lord.
I
gigantic,
am. I am. I didn't mean to
Sam's
laugh
Club.
at that, guys. I think it was nerve. I got nervous. I didn't know what to do.
Your
I got
hell is going
nervous.
to be just a gigantic Sam's Club, and nothing is put on the shelves correctly. It's all just totally jumbled.
That would be coming from the QSR days. That would be a nightmare and a half,
No,
man. So,
unfortunate.
man. Well, all right, Travis. So, hey, thank you for playing that game. You did really well. Your results will be submitted before the board. We'll get back to you within 7 to 10 years on how you did. Um, from there, man, awesome. So we know you got some stuff going on. Brad introduced you, but I'd love to hear your story, man. You can go as far back as you want. If you want to go, hey, I was born in North Carolina or whatever, or you can start. I mean, you start wherever you want, but give us kind of who Travis is, what kind of formed and shaped you, and then kind of what you're doing right now and what led to that.
So my background is that I started my career in full-time ministry about in 20 or around 2010. So worked in churches as a worship pastor for many years, and eventually transitioned out of the church world and wanted to move into something that I guess felt more measurable in a way. There are only so many subjective conversations I was willing to have. I'd hit my limit of if a song went well or if it didn't based off of everyone's subjective opinion. So I started into audio video lighting sales with the company I'm currently at called SES Integration. And I've been here now for 4 years. Never saw myself doing sales, but just being able to connect with people, understand what they were looking to accomplish. I have this gift that I can translate pastor. So to be able to understand essentially what was wanted and needed for people across the board, and like what is it that makes sense to them, because whether a system is $100,000 or it's a $7 million system, in the life of the church, typically it's a fairly significant investment, right? So I realized I had a little bit of a gift in sales that I wanted to nurture and learn and lean into. And so that's what I've been doing over the past 4 years. Saw a gap in our marketing, so I jumped in to oversee our marketing. So did storytelling through that, and in the process of that, learned a little bit about system design and all sorts of fun stuff with that. But uh, really where I must stand comes into the work is in, I guess it was in 2022. um, I was connecting with a buddy that I had met through my church, and he had mentioned that he was a part of this group that was like a Christian entrepreneurial thing. I thought that sounded amazing, and I got a bonus at the end of the year from my job, and it was that year was like the most amount of money I'd ever made in my life. And I was like, what do I do? I don't know. I don't know how to like I was never like I would have never considered myself wealthy. Like I just didn't know what to do with finances, and I was like, I have to get around people that know how to live this way because I don't. And so I took that guy out for breakfast. I just cold called him and was like, hey man, my business partner now, his name's also Brad, said, hey man, would love to take you to breakfast. And he thought I was going to sell him Amway, and I didn't. I just I sat with them and I said, hey, you own a successful business, you've been married for 14 years, and you've got 4 kids. And my current reality was I had 2 kids. My wife was pregnant with my third, and I didn't own a business, wanted to own a business, didn't know if I had what it took to be a business owner. It was this like illusory thing in my mind, like I didn't know if I had it, right? And then we had been married at that point for coming up on 10 years. So I'm like, this is a dude that's like 5 to 10 years ahead of where I want to be. So I just want to spend time and learn from him. And I'll never forget what transpired that morning because I just asked, I was like, hey, I want to be around you and learn from you. Is that okay? He's like, yes, totally fine. Um, there's something that I really want you to know, though. About 5 years ago, I cheated on my wife, and I almost lost everything that actually mattered in this world. Like, I almost lost my marriage, I almost lost my family. And at that point, who cares about my business? And if you don't have an aim in life, the same thing could happen to you. I was aimless, and it almost lost me everything. You need to be clear on your aim. You need to make sure that you know what you're up to. And I was like, damn, okay. That's fair warning. I thought I had a good marriage. I thought my life was fine. Um, and but he's challenging me. What clarify your aim? What's your aim? And I didn't have a great answer for him. I was just, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized I was just kind of floating along, aimlessly floating along. And he invited me to go to an event where the RevNet process, where that's where I got to know a lot of our mutual friends, Adrian and Dan Tacchini and their crew at Take New Ground. That event just rocked my world, man. I finally got honest with myself. I started looking at things I had been unwilling to see. If you noticed, up until now, I'd used feedback a lot, and how much that's been vital to me over the past couple of years. I had ignored feedback for so long. It was very hard for me to listen to feedback because I was starting from a place of I'm not enough, and any feedback that I would accept just immediately brought me to my knees in crushing shame. I was out of integrity, and I was living my future was largely determined by my past experiences. And I had a porn addiction that had been going on for years and years and years, that I thought I would be able to solve when I got married, that I thought I'd be able to solve when I had kids. And I had such shame about it and never confessed it to my wife. So I just all of that became clear to me in that event, and it was such a powerful thing. I realized that the deeper connection that I wanted with my spouse, and all of the different areas of my life where I had been blaming other things or other people, they were not the issues. It was me. I was my own worst enemy. I was the reason I was stuck where I was at, and I was tired of accepting it. So I went home, started the process of reconciling with my wife, confessed the porn addiction to her, and again, gained a resource in being able to overcome that, which was extremely powerful. We became even closer. I started noticing a shift in how I operated at work as well, where before I had lived off of the lie that nobody supports me, or everyone's kind of out to get me. Is this very defensive? I would look at people and think they're trying to screw me over. And as you can imagine, that seems like a really great trait to have as a team player on a team, right? But I could see clearly how it was not serving me anymore, and what was required and needed for me to be able to actually work in a team environment and succeed from a sales perspective as well. And I ended up having the best year in sales I'd ever had that year. So more importantly, I mean, I noticed the insane difference that was happening in my life when I took ownership of what was occurring for me. And as I was sharing my experience with all these other men, like, hey, this is what happened to me. This was this event that I went to and how beneficial it was for me. Um, I started to learn that pretty much every guy I talked to was in that same exact spot. And the real unfortunate part about all of this was these were largely church friends of mine, where we were going to church and we were posturing. And I don't want to blame the church because it's our own junk that's doing that, but like, we were posturing. We weren't coming to confess our sins to one another. We were being what's the way to say it? Conspirators, or we were conspiring together. We were what is the word? Accomplice. Thank you, Brad, for that. I really appreciate that. Yeah, attaboy, Brad, coming through. We were accomplices to each other and keeping our shame rackets going, and not being honest with ourselves. So from that experience, and when talking with Brad, my business partner who invited me to the RevNet process, he had a very similar experience about how he came from the brink and he got to a healthy point in his marriage, and now he's running his business as it's expanding and growing. And from that, man, I Must Stand was born. Brad had the original vision. He wanted to help men at their lowest points. And I came in and I mean, he kind of found me at my lowest point. And he was a huge asset to me. And so I Must Stand exists to transform ordinary men into legacy men. And the reality is, every man is an ordinary man. The moment that they wake up, we are biologically, like, ingrained to be ordinary. We're biologically ingrained to look towards the future through the lens of the past. We're biologically ingrained to be defensive and to make assumptions from our spacesuit or our defensive mechanisms. And all of those things can stand at odds with the vision that we have. So, in order for us to accomplish the visions that we have, and I believe that God's placed vision in all of us, but specifically, what I've noticed is men do have a huge fear in not accomplishing or not living up to the potential that they feel like they've been called to, like making a huge difference. I think that's at the core of everyone, but I've just noticed it hit men harder for some reason. That there's this desire to make an impact, a deeper purpose. They want to accomplish something bigger than themselves. And I believe that that's an internal, like an intrinsic thing that God has placed in all of us. But in order to accomplish that, you have to get familiar with your biggest adversary along the way, and that's going to be yourself, in all of the things that I listed out before. So that's how I Must Stand came to be. I'm doing that, building that company with Brad right now. I'm still doing the full-time sales. I have 3 amazing children. We're pregnant with our 4th kid. It's a whole party in my life over here. So life is good.
Travis, I love it, man. Thank you for your authenticity and just showing up and being you. I think, you and I connected. There's a lot of similar stories. I had a porn addiction for a number of years too, and it cost me a lot. Went through a marriage and starting over, and man, it's fascinating to me as you talked where a cup of coffee and courage got you. Like you had the balls to ask somebody for a cup of coffee, and then you had the courage to talk to them, and then you had the courage to actually keep showing up in that invite. Because at that moment where you said, hey, here's all this stuff that happened in my life, right? We have two responses. We can either shut that out or we can invite it. And dude, you invited it. Not only that, but you allowed that to transform your life and are now transforming so many men's lives. So anyways, your authenticity is a breath of fresh air. I think it will hopefully really connect with so many of our listeners, and I hope that it does. Because man, like, yeah, it's a huge challenge out there. Wrestling with pornography, and I think when we talk about the church, and we talked about this before, there can be an extra added element of shame, right? And man, it's just really cool to see that you are in the process of helping men build their legacy and live into that. That's awesome. So, anyways, I just wanted to thank you, man, for just showing up and being you and being honest and real. So,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is crazy. I think back a lot to that, like that morning. Um, it's funny, man, because going to the Revenant was such a powerful thing for me. And if not for Brad's authenticity in that moment, my business partner, I mean, what a risk it is to like it hits at your desire. Like we all have the desire to look good, be in control, be right. Like those are things that we're fighting every day. I don't want to look bad in someone else's eyes, or I don't want to whatever the judgments we have. And the fact that he showed up authentic, authenticity is always an invite for someone else to come into authenticity. Like that is if I can be one thing for other people, it would be an invitation for authenticity, because I know how exhausting it is to walk in that performative way and not and just feel like I'm holding back. Like pro, I am where I am, and I wouldn't change a thing. But to know that I lived in a marriage where I was like 90% known to my wife for 10 years versus like the person who I love and trusted the most, I wasn't even willing to be vulnerable fully with her. It's like that's just a miserable place to be. And when you're out of that level of integrity, all the little things fall from there. Everything falls out when you're not in integrity. Like your word starts to mean nothing across the board. And believe me, your effectiveness flows from that too. Like if you're someone that's listening to this and you think that yes, this is great, whatever, that how is this going to help me in my business? You don't think that living in integrity is going to increase your effectiveness? Like get out of here, man. Like it is crazy how much living up to your word and holding your word, what type of results come from that, both internally and externally. So I've got nothing to hide. I hid stuff for so long. I'm an open book at this point. um, and luckily the person that I reached out to was also an open book.
Travis, as you were sharing your story, you said a couple of things that really caused me to think. I think another way of talking about the idea of being an accomplice is collusion, right? This idea of collusion, and it's the idea that we have a secret or an unspoken maybe agreement or cooperative relationship where I look the other way for you, you look the other way for me. We don't really talk about it, although we mutually know it's happening. And I mean, this happens in my marriage. It happens in corporate environments and settings of that nature, where look, we like it's it's easier when we mutually enable one another. It We get to kind of persist in the status quo. And I deal with this a lot when I work with my clients on how to have healthy, productive conflict, right? Like, let's interject in the cyclical process of racketeering or collusion, whatever we want to call that. And let's break up those patterns so that we actually have to peel back, zoom out and look at what is it that I feel that I need to be enabled to do? What is it that you feel that you need to be enabled to do? And let's be curious, what might happen if we took a different approach? So what I love is us kind of bringing that to the surface through your own personal journey and through that church community that you referenced, because it's such a relevant topic for effective leadership. And I think it's probably the number one problem that I help clients deal with every day. How do I actually engage in meaningful conflict and stop repeating the same problems over and over and over again in my business?
Yeah, collusion is a much better word than accomplice. So I wish you would have fed me that one instead of accomplice. But yeah, unbelievable. You're holding out on me. No, I wholeheartedly agree. It's I think uh, what is going to make you successful is your willingness to risk. What conversations are you not having that you know you should be having? Uh, in whatever the context is. And for us, the way that we define it, and I must stand, when the path for an ordinary man to become a legacy man, it just takes one thing, and it's courage. Like oftentimes we know what needs to be said, we know what needs to be done, but we're not courageous enough to do it. And we're results oriented, where when I say that, we get very curious about what the results are saying about my aim. So I know you're Taylor, you're doing the Intrepid coaching right now, and we talked a lot about that when I went through Intrepid coaching. Just how your aim is, like your result will clarify what your aim is. And so that's why I say that feedback is such a vital process to us inside of this, especially in the areas where we have collusion going on, where we're just kind of accepting a status quo. Well, what is the aim, or what does the result say? If the result is not what I want to be, and it's against what I'm saying I wanted, I have to start by saying, all right, well, what if I actually did want this result? What would it gain me if I went down this path where I yielded this result? Like I didn't want this thing to blow up. I didn't want this project to be a cluster. But say I did. What would I have gained if I did want it to be that way? Well, I would have proved myself right, because I knew that there were some things that needed to happen, and I didn't say anything because I was trying to prove that this person, they should have been doing their job. Okay. So my aim was more to be right than to make the event successful. Okay. No shame, no bad, just noticing, right? So let's get the thing back on track. Where was I unwilling to risk? Well, this person, what they already don't like me. So if I come at them and I give them some sort of feedback, they're going to say X, Y, Z. So I withheld feedback. Okay. Well, I cared more about what someone else thought of me. I cared more about the way I looked than I cared about making the thing successful. So when you start getting into those basic of terms, uh, like it starts to wipe out collusion. It starts to bring about like a real the other ingredient to that is like, what are you committed to? Because if you're committed to a successful outcome and you know that these are things, I'm going to have to be okay with not being right. I'm going to have to be okay with risking with other people. Then when those things come up for you, you can have courage to overcome them. You can have the courage to say what you need to say, to live up to your word, to live up to whatever you need to live up to in those moments. But yeah, collusion is
You're bringing up an interesting piece of connective tissue in my mind. It's collusion happens in our leadership because our past informs our future self, right? In an unhealthy and I would say inaccurate way. When your future self informs your future self, or i.e. your commitments, right? Then collusion can't really exist because you're prospecting your future. You're imagining the future, not based on the previous pain of enablement that you've experienced, right? And whatever kind of daddy issues you haven't solved. But instead, the capability and the potential that you can imagine, the possibilities that are before you, rather than all of just the shit and the baggage that you've been carrying with you, for however long. Wow, Taylor, I let one slip this time. What are the odds?
I love
What's the
that.
payment? What do you owe me?
Uh,
You come onto my podcast and you use that kind of
Yeah.
language on here? That's unacceptable.
it's usually Taylor. It's usually Taylor, which is why I got to call it out.
This is
Okay.
I love
why we were okay with the first 10 seconds not recording anything before then.
Brad always jokes, and he says my version of Jesus swears, and I'm just putting that out for the internet because I liked it. I've adopted it. My version of Jesus swears too. So
Fair enough.
you know,
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
the
to your
future
point,
has a much more clean mouth. Let me say that.
here's hoping. Here's hoping, dear Lord. Yeah, to your point, man. I don't know if y'all. I'm sure you've heard this study, but there's a study that was out of UC Santa Barbara that talks about how much data, the estimated data that our minds are intaking at any moment. And it's estimated that we're bringing in 11 million bits of information per second, right? Per second, which is wild. We are processing in our conscious mind 50 to 60 of those 11 million bits of information per second, which I'm not a mathematician, but I think when I've put it in my calculator before, it's like 0.0000057% or something ridiculous like that. And we talked about getting to like a flow state or whatever, and we, like when we're just like really focused in and we're killing it, and like even at that point, our processing only goes up to I think I've seen studies that would say 5,000 bits of information is like the highest level of that a human can get to from a conscious mind. And so what that tells me is that there is more happening that we are unaware of than we are aware of. Not even just a little bit, not like 51% to 50%. I'm talking a significant amount more from what we don't know that is going on for us than what we do know. You are making decisions more out of what you are unaware of. You are operating more out of what you are unaware of than we all care to admit, truthfully. We like to think that we are in control. But I bring that stat up to say, like, you that the assumptions that your unconscious mind are making and the choices and how the thoughts that are being formed in it are based off of what you've made up about your past experiences and your survival mechanisms, which your survival
Go finish that thought. Finish that thought. But I'm really excited about what you're saying.
well, like you just your survival mechanisms are amazing, and they served you to get you to. They served humankind to get you to where you are now. Congratulations, we're alive. We've made it to this point. Guess what really sucks? Them being in the way of you trying to have a connected relationship with someone or visioning something in the future, right? So the like you have to understand that every day you are biased to not vision forward. Like you have those things actively working against you, which is why, like, to bring up the collusion point or the things that we make up, the assumptions we make up, we are meaning machines. We assume crap literally all of the time. That's all we do because that's how we are wired. And so, where it takes courage is it takes courage to look inside of what maybe is forming our beliefs instead of looking externally for, whatever the situation is happening. Like it's understanding I am my own worst enemy. I have all these things going against what I'm committed to. And then talking about the commitments or living up to your future self. Man, you can make a promise and it's going to make you. We can do that, but we have to be aware of what we bring to the table.
So you used a really interesting term that you're unpacking right now, which is re-mean. You used that term when you were talking about I Must Stand and sharing some of your story. Explain to me and our listeners what it means to re-mean and why that's such an important part of the process of growth as a leader. Or I would even use your term, a legacy man.
Yeah. So we, like I was just saying, we bring all of the meaning to the conversations that we have. It's it's just how we are wired. We are meaning machines. So I believe it's the book Thanks for the Feedback that references the study that talks about we bring the meaning to the conversation. Um, so you can say something to me and I'm having a conversation in my mind about the conversation that we are having. And that is, I'm having to sift through what I'm making up about your assumptions, your words, all of the things that are going to it. My past, it's my past that is shaping how I'm listening to the present. And what we have to do is we have to do deep dives into figuring out what's going on for us. Like what is shaping what I'm listening for? What beliefs may be guiding me to listen to a specific thing? And that's why I talked about earlier looking at the outcome, looking at the result and just getting curious about what it might mean. What would want me to get to that result because I got it? What would want me to actually be there, and let it illuminate what the belief is that's causing me to chase down that thing. So we do this inside of our coaching, we do this inside of our events. It's very difficult to do by yourself. It's not something that often you're going to be able to just sit there and really process and get to the middle of it, because we're really great at conning ourselves. We're our subconscious is really powerful, and coaching exists for a reason, to give that third party perspective and to really help give us insight into what we're up to. So I say all that to say there are beliefs that we have made up before. Again, I'll give you a great example that I've gone through with work. So um, I have my full time job. I got to a point in time where I was reaching out. I had a couple different projects that were going on that were stressing me out. I reached out to my team, to my bosses, and was trying to get answers. They were very hard to get a hold of. It didn't seem like they had a lot of time or attention to give me in those moments, and they were working on other projects. And so I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking like, dude, this really sucks. These guys could give two craps about me. Like they don't care about the projects I have going on. They prioritize resources to their projects. They are doing their thing and they could give like whatever for me. They just don't care. And so from that point, I'm like, do I even want to work in a spot where I'm valued? Like where I'm not valued? And I'm having a competitor call, and so I'm taking the phone call and I'm exploring other options, and I'm pretty close to wanting to leave the company. And then it gets to a point where we have like a come to Jesus meeting, and like I'm confessing all of this about how I was feeling, and it came out that I was looking for other work, and it was this whole conflict that I had avoided up until that point. And they were just blown away at how I was where I was at. Like they came at it from a completely different perspective. They're like, dude, we gave you the biggest bonus last year. We leave you to handle your own problems because you're capable of doing it. Like we thought you liked being left alone. We don't like mandate office hours. We don't feel the need to regulate you. Like we trust you. Like we thought that this was what you wanted. And what they were doing was because they valued me. They highly valued me. And it was my own crap that I was bringing to the table that I was looking at it saying, I'm not valued here. And when I'm realizing like there is this scarcity mindset inside of me, this belief that formed that like from an event that happened where I felt like I had been passed over on multiple occasions. I looked at my victim story and it's playing out again. And it almost robbed me. I almost let it rob me of a great position and a great organization where people love me and value me. That's what I mean by I had to go back to where that belief existed that said that these guys don't have my back, that I have to do this by myself. And I had to go back to the time where I formed that belief, and I had to take a responsible view for it and understand what the organization at the time, whatever it was that I was going through, I had to put myself in their shoes and understand what was happening for them, why they made the choice that was available to them, and that I wasn't getting screwed over. How did I contribute to that thing not working out? And when I look at it now as hey, I have great resource around me. I'm not screwed over. There are people that are with me. It's okay. It changes the way I show up, changes the way I showed up in work in that instance. And it ended up me having my best year in my career. So yeah, going back and re-meaning these things that are guiding me all the while, I had no idea it was guiding me. That's the worst part about all of this, man. It operates in the area of life we don't know, that we don't even know it's there. And it has dire consequences on our day to day. So we've got a motto that we have around I Must Stand, which is own the way you show up. Like there are so many things in this world I cannot control, but you know what? I can control this guy. I can control what I am bringing to the table. I have to get curious, ruthlessly investigate what is going on for me.
I have a mentor who says, the truth you don't know will kill you. And you remind me of that statement as you explain what's underneath the surface that determines the decisions that we make. Springboarding off this, Travis, could you define the idea and the principle transformation? What does transformation mean?
Uh, to me, it means new. It's not in reference to the past. It's not better. It's not change. It's not different. It is something new. And I say something new because I don't have to reference the past to vision it. I can say, here is my word, here is the vision, here's what I am committed to accomplish or committed to cause. And as I make that promise, I can live up to that promise. And when transformation takes place, when I'm able to, in the gap between current reality in the desired outcome or the vision that I'm committed to cause, in that process, it's just a huge feedback process, right? Like I'm in that tension where I'm living up to my word and then I might fail, I might break my word, or I have to renegotiate with myself. And it's just asking that question, what is more important? And replacing and figuring out what beliefs that are there that I have to replace in order to live up to the future that I'm committed to. So transformation is something new, man, and it's it's a difficult process. It's a very introspective process. You have to, we say it takes courage because it does. Like you have to look at things inside of yourself that you don't want to look at. We joke, we say hug the cactus is the best way to deal with it. But in order to own those, in order to get to the future of that you want, you have to be willing to embrace the things that you don't want to embrace. Like, I mentioned pornography for me was something that I struggled with and was a pretty big shame point for myself. Well, I didn't just will it away. What my willingness to not look at it as a something to be shameful, but to turn it into my greatest ally. Like if I'm wanting to turn to pornography, that means that something is wanted or missing for me. Something's wanted and needed for me. So it's an indicator for me opposed to a great shame point. And all of what we're experiencing, the things that we judge amongst ourselves and in our pursuit of the future that's worth having, it just, yeah, takes courage to do that. But that's to me what I would lay out as transformation, creating something new and adjusting course as you're going. Leadership. Uh, I don't really have a great answer for you. I know this is a leadership podcast, so I should have a well-informed thing to say, but the reality is if I just started like lipping off something, it's going to feel kind of because I felt like I knew what leadership was before, and I don't. Maybe those were the ironically the times I felt like I was the most informed on leadership. I was definitely the most unhealthy leader I had been. So if I could boil it down to something that's just coming up for me right now, uh, I would say my willingness, the leadership is going to be your ability to serve others, your ability to cast vision, and to like make it happen. I guess be effective with it. Um, I don't know. That's just that to me is what's just like that's what's needed for me right now, right? Like in building a company, I have a vision that I've set out, and I am to make it happen. Like I've got to go out and do it, and there are great resources around, and it's just about taking advantage of that, and and leaning into the resources around to do it. And maybe I would say that leadership of others means nothing if you're unwilling to lead yourself or unable to lead yourself. um, I think self leadership is probably the bigger thing that would matter to me than leadership outside. Maybe that's what even leadership is to me, is self leadership. Your ability to own the way that you show up and know what your convictions are and treat people and make decisions accordingly.
That's insightful. You mentioned it makes perfect sense. And it's insightful because you mentioned service to others, clarity around vision, and the ability to execute. Those were the first sort of three premises that you mentioned. And what Taylor and I find episode after episode, conversation after conversation, we try to ask everyone who comes on the podcast this very question. And we get answers just like what you gave, which is like, I don't really know. Let me tease it out, to, we had a PhD with a very formal definition of leadership, right? And those three components are more or less a part of everyone's definition in some capacity. And what we find is more often than not this idea of self leadership, right view of self, integrity, right? Radical ownership, extreme ownership, whatever version of responsibility that you want to talk about, is pretty much always baked into someone's understanding of leadership. And so I think that there are some kind of global, universal principles that we all know, and they get crowded out and they get confused in the process of actually doing the work of leadership, right? We forget what it means to be a true leader. And I think oftentimes it's because in the process of pursuing a vision, we forget to lead ourselves. In the process of leading others, we neglect the very important work of leading ourselves.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, ironically, I feel like almost the opposite of that right now. Like I feel like it's easy for me to feel some sort of way or have something come up internally about like, this is a leadership podcast. Like, why don't you have a better like answer for what leadership is? I mean, it's truly a racket that's running in there, but like is ironic as it is to say to serve other people. Like I've been so focused on self leadership recently, mostly because I spent years blaming other people. I spent years looking at other circumstances and assuming that they were the reasons why I wasn't where I wanted to be. And in the course of the past few years, where I focus inward and I have identified myself as the biggest enemy between the future I want and my current reality, I, I'm not as concerned with John Maxwell's axioms on all these other things. I'm just like, what, like it, and man, it's a lot of work to manage myself. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a piece of crap. All of us are, but like, I've just become so aware of uh, how cynical and how, um, just how scarcity minded I can be. And if I'm not on top of that daily, and this goes back to our language internally of ordinary man versus legacy man. Like we're all ordinary men. Like you don't graduate and then you're done. It's There's a constant awareness to be on guard. We just happen to, put a high emphasis on faith, family, body, and business. But like my ability or inability to be courageous daily in decisions that are around those things, like that's a battle. Like I don't need to worry about other people. I got to worry about myself. um And typically the way, like my way of being when I am ruthlessly aware of, actually I'll take one more thing. Sorry, I actually will add one. Presence. I need to be present with people. When I am with people, I am present with people. And I can only do that when I'm doing the work inwardly outside of that. Like I think in order to serve someone, you have to be present with them. In order to understand what they need, you have to be present with them. In order to connect with them and to solve their problems, you have to be present with them. And so all of the things that I mentioned from a leadership perspective, I would throw into being present with someone. That's externally what happens. And I can do that when I am aware of my own crap and I can own it and, you know, deal with it so I can be present.
You shared a lot about some of the infrastructure and the principles of I Must Stand, but tell us more about the process itself. What well, the products, the services, get more into like what you guys offer and how you actually work with the leaders on a day in, day out basis. Like how do they engage and where do you take them from, A to Z?
Yeah, so we've broken up events into ordinary men events, quote unquote, courageous men events, and legacy men events, and we have all sorts of ways for guys to get connected to what we're doing. One of the big focus points for us that has been huge has been getting our Wake Weekends, which I think you referenced earlier in the show. Our Wake Weekends, it's a 3-day leadership challenge that is designed to bring up limiting beliefs to the surface. So you're going to be pushed to your limit, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And these exercises that we're doing, like when you operate in them, what comes up inside of you, we just take inventory of. We notice and we get curious about, like, hey, what's happening for you when we do this? And we just start to see what's there, what's causing it. So it's an incredible weekend. We just had one this past weekend. We had 19 guys come through, 19 insane stories of guys who are like radically different than the way that they came into the weekend. And I yeah, I can't wait to get all these testimonies up because it's powerful what transpired. So that's one really great way if you want to jump into a Wake Weekend. Powerful experience. It's a risk. It's worth doing. And I'll give all the information for that. You can go to www.imuststand.com or thewakeweekend.com to check that out. We also offer coaching. So we have a coaching arm where we'll do one-on-one coaching with guys around faith, family, body, business, any of those topics, connecting with guys and helping develop them inside of that. Just essentially get clear on what the vision is, get clear on what the current reality is, and then acknowledge the tension between and figure out what's getting in the way of them keeping their word. It's that simple. And once we break a commitment, we just get curious about it. A lot of curiosity, a lot of asking questions. So we've got coaching, we've got the Wake Weekend. We have a mastermind that right now we're only offering to guys who have gone through our Wake Weekend, but it's a weekly meetup where we're focused on developing men and their faith, family, body, business. We have business leaders from around the country who serve on our leadership team. I think our leadership team at this past event had close to a net worth of over $200 million. A lot of successful businessmen who love Jesus, who love to invest in other men who have gone through this type of work before. They have various topics that we're doing. One of a really successful business owner is teaching a class on how to launch a business. When's a great time to launch a business? The next week, I'm doing a conversation on pornography. The week after that, we're talking about marriage things. And so there are all sorts of topics that center around faith, family, body, business, which are our pillars. So mastermind, the Wake Weekend, coaching, and we are doing the beginning of the year, which I'm really excited about this. We're doing something called the Quest, which is a 90-day sprint. So it's over the course of 13 weeks. And in those 13 weeks, it's a very goal-oriented curriculum that we will take you through, that you're going to be coached through. And we're doing this type of work, but centered around very specific goals to this application. Really great way to get connected. We're going to be doing that at the beginning of the year. To do that with with other guys being coached with you, it's super cheap. It's only like $1,000. If you want one-on-one coaching with it, it's $1,500. It's pretty amazing curriculum that one of our dear friends, Taylor and I's mutual friends, Dan Tacchini, um, developed. Great curriculum. And then finally, we actually partner with Take New Ground, where when guys have gone through our events, we push them through their events as well. So the Revenant process is a great place to get connected to doing that deeper work that we've talked about. And Taylor is currently going through something we recommend called the Intrepid Coaches Academy, where it's a deep dive into leadership and pretty phenomenal training that I went through. Taylor's going through. I'm a big fan. So we partner with them in that. So that's it, man. Those are the ways.
Travis, 10 years ago when we met in Pine Mountain, Georgia, neither of us envisioned having this conversation with so much life having transpired and the good, the bad, the ugly that come with being a modern man in these times. But this has been an awesome conversation, and I'm so grateful for your time and that our listeners are going to get to just have a window into the way that you think and to the transformation that you've experienced and to the way that you're helping other people grow. Any parting words of wisdom or encouragement for the listeners?
Uh, it is funny, man. Like, who would have thought? Look at us. Look at us. Uh, Man, I would just say this this work is so worth it. It's so worth it. Probably the biggest opposition that we have in doing this work is people with the mindset that I don't need to do it. My favorite feedback that I get from the weekend, and I got it from 19 out of 19 guys that went through this past experience, they said, I think everyone should go through this weekend. Literally, all 19 of them said, everyone needs to do this work because it's so empowering to take responsibility opposed to blaming other people. It's so empowering to start looking inwardly. Like, I can't tell you the correlation. I cannot tell you how miserable I felt when my word was broken and it was everyone else's fault. And there might be people that are listening right now. They're listening to a leadership podcast. They're thinking, how can I improve? What are the different axioms or the different things I'm going to pick up, the different slogans that I'm going to try to work out? And I was there. Like I've read a crap ton of books. I've done, I've been in all the different trainings, and I can truly tell you the most effective work that I have experienced is doing transformational coaching and experiencing transformational coaching. And the best part is, all it takes is courage to do it. If you are willing to do a deep dive into the things that you do not know, that you don't know, yes, it's a painful process. You're going to have to come up against things that you judge harshly against yourself. You're going to have to learn to move past those things, but it is worth doing. It is worth doing. Everyone will benefit from it. And specifically, my call is to men. Like I love to partner with men in this. That's why I Must Stand is for men. Um, and I have a vision where guys are going through our work. They're coming home more equipped fathers. They're coming home as fathers that they could be for their kids that their fathers never were to them. They're coming home to be men that stand in their marriage and for their marriage and learn to love their spouses in ways that they never even thought was possible, that they're so connected with their spouse. I thought my spouse was not, I didn't think she was my enemy, but I hid things from my spouse because I didn't trust her as the great resource. I didn't see her as the great resource she was. And to see and experience the transformation of what was to what is now, and being a father, and in my marriage as a provider, even in the way that God sees me, like I've been able to see where I was believing lies about the way that God looked at me. Like, I had struggled so much with self-acceptance for the longest time. It was so hard for me to not to look at this feedback without feeling, I mean, just drowning in shame. But through this work, like, I'm just learning that God accepts me in the best times of my life, in the worst parts of my life. Who am I to not accept what God has already accepted? All of this work and this no other word to say it than freedom, really, that I have experienced. It's all come from this type of work. So I'm just passionate about it, man. I want everyone to do it. I want everyone to experience it. I really believe that it will change your life. I really believe that it will shift the way that you think, and it will shift the results. So if you want something different than what you're currently getting, give it a try. That's all I got.
Travis, thank you. It's been a pleasure. All right, Daily Leader listeners, remember, like, subscribe, share, comment, keep it friendly, keep it PG. All right.
Yeah,
And
that's to you, dude.
right. Yes.
You keep it
Take my own
PG.
advice.
You're expecting me to play this for my kids? Your freaking sailor mouth. It is unbelievable. No, seriously, thank you for having me on here, man. I really appreciate talking to you. It is really cool to see what God's doing in our lives and how fun it is to do this. So, but thank you. Yes, everyone should like and subscribe to this podcast. This is the greatest podcast of all time. I don't care what anyone
Thank you.
else has ever
Take
said
that,
about it.
Huberman. Take that, Rich Roll.
That's right.